It always begins the same way: a sudden jolt in the chest, a feeling like your heart has just skipped a beat or three, a whisper of dread curling through your spine before your brain even understands what's happening. You're sitting at your kitchen table. The sun is rising. The day hasn't even begun. And yet your body is already at war. You grip the edge of the table. You take a slow breath. You tell yourself it's just stress, just a bad night's sleep, just hormones. But your body disagrees. Your stomach flips. Your throat tightens. Your hands begin to tingle. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice says, "Something's wrong." So you reach for your usual morning comfort, something to ground you. Maybe it's a warm mug of herbal tea, or a slice of toast with almond butter and banana, or a spoonful of honey stirred gently into oatmeal. It's your ritual, your anchor, your way of saying, "I'm taking care of myself." But what if that ritual is the reason you feel worse? What if the very thing you reach for in the name of healing is quietly sending your nervous system into overdrive? Here's what almost no one realizes. Anxiety isn't always loud. It doesn't always come screaming into your life like a panic attack in the middle of traffic. Sometimes it tiptoes in quietly, through your food, your breath, your sleep, through tiny innocent habits that feel comforting but are biologically triggering. Your brain is a delicate symphony of chemicals: serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, GABA, and the foods you eat send signals that either soothe that system or flood it with confusion. The result? Emotional shakiness, sudden fear, chest tightness, insomnia, all from something as seemingly harmless as a fruit smoothie, a calming tea, or even a natural sweetener. And the most terrifying part? These triggers often hit hours later. You don't connect the dots. You don't suspect your snack. You blame your job, your relationships, your mind, but it's not just your life, it's your chemistry. Because calming anxiety isn't just about positive thinking or deep breathing. It's about protecting your brain from subtle daily attacks that come in the form of well-meaning food choices. And in a moment, we're going to reveal 3 foods that, when used correctly, can bring near-instant relief to your anxious system. But before we get to what helps, we have to expose what's hurting you. Let's begin with what most people never suspect: the sweet trap of natural sugars. We've been conditioned to believe that if it comes from nature, it must be good for us. Honey, bananas, dates, even those organic fruit smoothies, marketed as wellness staples, are often the go-to comfort foods for anxious minds. They feel safe, gentle, nourishing. But here's the hidden truth. Your anxious brain doesn't care where the sugar came from. It only responds to the blood sugar spike it causes, and the crash that follows. When you eat foods high in natural sugars, especially early in the day or close to bedtime, your blood glucose rises rapidly. In someone with a calm, regulated nervous system, insulin does its job and brings those levels back down smoothly. But if you live with chronic anxiety, your system is already dysregulated. Your adrenal glands are primed to detect danger. Your cortisol levels may already be elevated. So even a moderate glucose crash can be perceived as a survival threat. And when your brain senses danger, it responds the only way it knows how: adrenaline, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, dizziness. That sudden, stomach-churning feeling that something is deeply wrong, even when you're just sitting on the couch. The second villain hides in your tea cabinet. You might drink stress relief, herbal blends at night, assuming they're soothing. But many of these teas contain hidden stimulants. Ingredients like green tea extract, guayusa, or yerba mate are naturally rich in caffeine, even when marketed as herbal. Your brain may not register the subtle kick right away, but your nervous system does. Caffeine triggers the release of norepinephrine and adrenaline, hormones that push your body into alertness. In the morning, this might feel like clarity. At night, it feels like anxiety, racing thoughts, insomnia. A wired but tired feeling that robs you of restorative sleep and leaves your mind spinning. The third mistake? Eating calming. Snacks late at night. Dark chocolate, bananas with almond butter, honey with warm milk. These sound nurturing, but the timing is everything. When you eat within an hour or 2 of sleep, your insulin rises. And insulin and melatonin have a delicate relationship. High insulin suppresses melatonin, your sleep hormone. So you might fall asleep, but it won't be deep. Your REM cycles are disrupted. You wake up suddenly, your cortisol spikes too early, and you start the day already anxious. What makes these triggers so dangerous is how reasonable they seem. You're not eating donuts and energy drinks. You're not binging fast food. You're following advice from wellness blogs, from influencers, from natural health sites. But if your nervous system is already dysregulated, even gentle mistakes can keep you trapped in a cycle of panic, fatigue, and emotional instability. It's not about restriction. It's about understanding how your anxious brain responds to food chemistry. Once you see the patterns, you'll never look at these habits the same way again. Now, let's meet someone who lived this exact cycle until it nearly broke her. Her name was Danielle Hart. She was 47, a former marketing consultant from Portland, Oregon, who had recently transitioned to working from home. After 2 decades of managing high-stress client portfolios and cross-country travel, she thought simplifying her life would finally bring peace. But instead of serenity, Danielle found herself battling something far more disorienting, a rising tide of unexplained anxiety. It started with subtle signs: restlessness in the morning, a flutter in her chest as she scrolled through emails, tightness in her jaw that wouldn't go away. She chalked it up to the adjustment: new routine, less structure, more time alone. But then, the panic attacks began. The first one hit while she was standing in line at the post office. Out of nowhere, her heart began to race. Her hands trembled. The room seemed to tilt. She staggered outside, gasping for air, certain she was about to collapse. Paramedics came. Her vitals were fine. Probably just stress, they said. Maybe low blood sugar. Danielle couldn't make sense of it. She was eating clean, drinking calming teas, meditating. She had cut out caffeine years ago and avoided processed foods. Her morning routine was sacred: a banana with almond butter, a cup of chamomile tea with honey, and a quiet hour on her yoga mat. She thought she was doing everything right, but the attacks kept coming, always in the late morning or early afternoon. She noticed she'd feel shaky and distracted by 10:30 a.m., no matter how much she'd slept. By 1 p.m., her thoughts raced uncontrollably, catastrophic, irrational, relentless. She'd try to calm herself with a smoothie, often made with oat milk, dates, and blueberries. Sometimes she'd sip a second herbal tea, usually labeled as relaxing or stress support. But the panic grew. She began to fear her own body: dizziness, pins and needles, chest tightness, fear that she would faint or die alone in her kitchen. One night, after waking up for the 4th time, heart pounding at 2 a.m., Danielle broke. She sat on the bathroom floor, hugging her knees, sobbing. "I don't understand," she whispered to herself. "I'm doing everything right. Why do I feel like I'm dying?" It was only after working with a neurologically focused nutritionist that the truth emerged. Danielle's daily banana honey almond butter ritual was spiking her blood sugar first thing in the morning, then crashing it. Her oat milk smoothies, though plant-based, were sending her glucose soaring again, midday. And the calming teas? They contained guayusa and green tea extract, caffeine-rich herbs that were priming her for a biological panic attack. Her body wasn't failing her. It was begging her to stop unintentionally harming it. Danielle had never once considered that her anxiety wasn't mental, that it wasn't trauma or stress or overthinking, that it was chemistry. Simple, trackable, preventable biochemical misfires that she was unknowingly triggering every single day. The attacks didn't stop overnight, but they slowed, then softened, and eventually they disappeared. Danielle didn't become fearless, but she became informed. And with that, her power returned. Danielle's story isn't rare. It's a near-perfect map of how anxiety disorders often develop, not from massive traumas, but from repeated, misunderstood physiological stressors that accumulate until the brain can no longer distinguish between a real threat and a dietary mistake. To understand what happened inside Danielle's body, we need to zoom into the central nervous system, specifically, the delicate relationship between glucose regulation, adrenal hormones, and neurotransmitter balance. Let's start with the basics. The brain runs almost exclusively on glucose, but it requires stability. The key word here is stability, not spikes. When you consume a food that's high in sugar, yes, even natural sugars like bananas, dates, or honey, your blood sugar rises quickly. This causes a sharp insulin response, as your pancreas tries to shuttle the glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells. In a person with anxiety, this process doesn't unfold smoothly. Why? Because chronic anxiety dysregulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, the system that governs your stress response. Your adrenal glands are already hyperactive, constantly pumping out cortisol and adrenaline, which raise blood sugar even further. When you then add a dietary sugar spike, your body overcorrects, dropping your glucose too low, too fast, and the brain interprets this drop as an emergency. Low blood sugar, called reactive hypoglycemia, triggers the release of epinephrine, adrenaline, to push sugar back into the bloodstream. But adrenaline also brings all the symptoms of panic: racing heart, shaking, nausea, air hunger, dizziness, dread. That's why Danielle felt like she was dying in the post office. Her body wasn't overreacting. It was trying to save her. Now add hidden caffeine into the mix, like the guayusa in her tea, and you further stimulate norepinephrine, another arousal hormone. This amplifies alertness and anxiety, especially if consumed without food or later in the day when your body should be preparing to wind down. Meanwhile, the production of GABA, your brain's main calming neurotransmitter, is being suppressed by high cortisol and poor sleep. Without enough GABA, your nervous system has no brakes. Your mind spins. Your muscles stay tense. Your thoughts get stuck in loops. And that oat milk smoothie? Most commercial oat milks are loaded with added sugars and contain emulsifiers that irritate the gut lining. And the gut, where 90% of your serotonin is produced, is deeply connected to anxiety. When your microbiome is inflamed, your brain gets the signal: danger. This is where the gut-brain axis becomes crucial. Your vagus nerve, the long nerve that connects your brainstem to your digestive system, relays constant feedback about your internal safety. Blood sugar crashes, gut inflammation, poor sleep, or nutrient deficiencies all tell the brain one thing: we're not safe. And the brain responds the only way it knows how, with anxiety. Even her sleep was hijacked by her nutrition. Eating within 90 minutes of bedtime, especially sugary or carbohydrate-rich snacks, raises insulin, which in turn suppresses melatonin, the hormone your brain needs to initiate deep restorative sleep. This is why Danielle would wake up panicked at 2 a.m. Her cortisol was rising too early, disrupting her sleep cycles and triggering a fear response in the middle of the night. So no, Danielle wasn't broken. She wasn't emotionally weak or psychologically damaged. Her brain was running like a freight train through a broken signal system, receiving chemical messages that danger was near, even when everything looked calm on the outside. And here's the most important point. Once you understand the language of the nervous system, you can start to change the messages. You don't need to eliminate all sugar or fear every bite. You need strategic adjustments, ones that stabilize your internal environment so your brain no longer feels under siege. Because anxiety isn't always in your mind. Often it's in your blood, your hormones, your gut, your sleep. And once you see that, you can stop fighting yourself and start supporting your system in a way that finally brings peace. So what actually works? What do I tell my patients when they come to me exhausted, trembling, afraid of their own bodies? When they've tried every supplement, every meditation app, every calming tea, and nothing quiets the storm? I start with one thing. One simple, natural, powerful shift that creates stability: the anxiety-calming morning combo. Here's what it looks like. Within 30 minutes of waking up, you eat a blood sugar balancing breakfast. Not a fruit bowl, not a green juice, not just coffee. Your brain needs grounding, and that comes from protein plus fat plus fiber. Here's a specific recipe I often recommend. 2 pasture-raised eggs, scrambled or boiled. Half an avocado, lightly salted, a slice of whole grain or sprouted bread, optional. Handful of walnuts, or a spoonful of almond butter, no sugar added. A calming drink made with roasted dandelion root tea or chamomile. No caffeine, no sweeteners. Why this works? Eggs are rich in choline, a nutrient that supports the production of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that helps regulate mood and mental clarity. Avocados and nuts provide healthy fats, especially omega-9s, which support cell membrane stability in the brain and reduce inflammation. The absence of sugar prevents the glucose-insulin roller coaster, meaning your brain doesn't get tricked into panic by sudden drops in energy. The warm, caffeine-free tea soothes the digestive tract and activates the vagus nerve, your body's natural brake system for stress. I always tell my patients, your brain wants to feel safe. This breakfast tells it, you're safe now, you're nourished, you don't need to be on alert. Now, let's talk about the 4 p.m. anxiety dip, a common window when cortisol drops and people feel moody, shaky, or panicky. Instead of reaching for fruit or dark chocolate, I suggest this: a small bowl of Greek yogurt, unsweetened, with chia seeds and a few slices of cucumber or celery. Or if you're dairy-free, hummus with raw carrots or snap peas. Why? The protein and fat provide lasting energy. The fiber slows absorption, and the act of chewing raw vegetables stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which tells your body it's not in crisis. And then there's the evening ritual. Forget the late-night sweet snack. Replace it with a magnesium-rich calming drink. Warm almond milk, unsweetened. Plus 1/4 teaspoon. Cinnamon. A dash of nutmeg, optional. Add 500 mg magnesium glycinate. Check with your doctor. This blend helps lower cortisol and encourages melatonin production, preparing your body for deep, uninterrupted sleep. You don't need a dozen products. You don't need to cut out entire food groups. You just need to stabilize your brain's environment. Do this for 7 days, morning, afternoon, and evening. Watch how your thoughts begin to slow, how your breathing deepens, how your sleep starts to return. This isn't magic, it's just the right information, finally in your hands. Then there was Eric Collins, 59 years old, a semi-retired architect living in Tampa, Florida, calm on the outside, always composed, deliberate, methodical, until the day his wife found him sitting on the kitchen floor, clutching his chest, pale and soaked in sweat, whispering, "I think this is it." But it wasn't a heart attack. It was his 3rd panic episode that month. Eric never saw it coming. He didn't feel anxious in the traditional sense. He wasn't a worrier. He didn't dwell on worst-case scenarios. What he did do, however, was chase energy. He called it his focus fuel, a smoothie he drank every morning around 10 a.m. to keep his mind sharp and fight the afternoon fog. It seemed harmless: blueberries, spinach, oat milk, a scoop of adaptogenic protein powder with ashwagandha and maca root, sometimes a splash of green tea for clarity. He'd sip it slowly while working on home renovation sketches. And yet, every afternoon around 2 or 3 p.m., a strange sensation would creep in. His chest would tighten. His ears would buzz. A wave of heat would rise up his neck. His thoughts would scatter like birds startled by gunfire. He'd lie down, legs elevated, breathing shallow, afraid to move. Doctors ran heart tests. All normal. Thyroid, fine. Blood pressure, stable. Just stress, they said. But Eric couldn't find the stress. He wasn't working full-time. He had financial security. He exercised. He meditated. His life was slower than it had been in decades. What no one asked about: his smoothie. It turned out his adaptogenic protein powder contained guarana, a potent stimulant with twice the caffeine concentration of coffee beans. Combined with the green tea and natural sugars in the oat milk, it was creating a chemical cocktail that sent Eric's adrenal system into high alert. Daily. The maca root? Though marketed as a mood balancer, it can raise androgens and increase dopaminergic activity, which, in someone with anxiety, may intensify mental overstimulation and agitation. The result was a body in a constant state of low-grade fight or flight. Like Danielle, Eric was trying to nourish himself, but he didn't understand how his unique chemistry was interacting with natural ingredients. His smoothies weren't grounding him. They were flooding his system with excitatory compounds, followed by crashes that left him shaky and vulnerable to panic. Once he removed the stimulants and replaced his smoothie with a savory mid-morning snack: boiled eggs, a handful of almonds, water with a pinch of sea salt, his panic attacks vanished. His mind felt quieter. His body anchored. The random episodes stopped being random. Eric didn't need more meditation. He needed metabolic safety. Because for people like him, and maybe like you, the line between nourishment and overload is much thinner than it seems. And if all of this surprised you, if you're now wondering what other so-called healthy choices might be turning your nervous system against you, Wait until you hear about the one vitamin that silently blocks your brain's ability to produce melatonin every single night. It's in your multivitamin. It's in your protein bar. It might even be in that calming supplement you take before bed. And without even knowing it, you could be sabotaging your own sleep, your hormonal balance, and your ability to calm down, all from a tiny, innocent pill. We'll uncover that secret and how to fix it in the next episode. If you've made it this far, I want you to take a breath, a real one, deep, slow. Let your shoulders drop just a little. Because here's the truth. No one tells you. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not failing at life. You're overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by signals your body doesn't know how to interpret. Overwhelmed by advice that doesn't fit your nervous system. Overwhelmed by trying to do everything right and still feeling like everything's wrong. But the moment you start to understand your anxiety not as a flaw but as a language, everything changes. You stop fearing your symptoms. You start decoding them. You realize that a racing heart, shallow breath, or sudden fear is your brain's way of asking for stability, for safety, not more effort, not more control. And now, you know how to respond. With foods that calm, not confuse. With habits that regulate, not stimulate. With presence, not punishment. You have more power than you think. You just needed someone to translate the signals, to shine a light in the fog. So if this spoke to you, if you feel a little less alone, I invite you to leave a comment below, just a simple 1, to let me know you're here, you're listening, and you're ready to reclaim your peace. Because your healing starts not with perfection, but with awareness, with softness, with the quiet decision to stop fighting your body and start working with it. And that decision, you just made it.